Before I decided to become a rabbi, as you heard, I was a French literature student. And like many French literature students, I found my way to Zola and Dora because I first fell in love with The Little Prince. Even now, this short and seemingly simple book remains one of my sacred texts. In case you haven't read it before or might want to pick it up again, I hope you'll feel inspired to do so. And this morning, as we think about the possibilities we possess for change as individuals and in relationship, I want to share two pieces of that story with you. The Little Prince has lived all his life largely alone on a tiny planet with 3 miniature volcanoes, and the care of his planet is his daily responsibility. As he explains, it's simply a matter of discipline. When you've finished your own tidying up, then you must thoroughly tidy up your planet as well. Alone on this planet, he knows that the responsibility rests with him, and daily he commits to it. When a beautiful flower begins to grow on his planet, he tends to her with the same loving attention, and in so doing, he begins to understand the possibilities and the challenges of connection. This relationship changes the Little Prince, and he ultimately leaves his tiny home exploring other planets before finally arriving on our own. Once there, he finds himself lonely until he meets a fox who will not play with him unless the Little Prince tames him. Taming is a new concept to the Little Prince, so the fox tells him they need to establish ties, slowly and deliberately building trust until they are in relationship. And then, once tamed, the fox says, "We shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I will be unique in all the world." The Little Prince wants to create this relationship that the fox describes, but he hesitates because he doesn't have much time. As he explains, "I have friends to discover and a great many things to understand." So the fox tells him, "One only understands the things that one tames. People have no more time to understand anything. They buy things already made at the shops, but there's no shop anywhere where one can buy friendship. And so people have no friends anymore. If you want a friend, tame me." In other words, take the time, make the effort, establish ties. The Little Prince finally heeds these instructions and he tames as the fox. They become unique to one another. They have need for one another. And the fox tells him, "People have forgotten this truth, but you must not forget it. You become responsible forever for that which you have tamed." For me, this story teaches that change begins when each of us recognizes that we are responsible for the world around us. The Little Prince alone on his planet seems to inherently understand the importance of responsibility because he's the only one there. But as he moves to new and bigger planets and starts to build relationships, he learns that one of the most profound ways to create change is to reach out and establish ties, slowly and intentionally building something bigger than himself. I believe that the possibility of change begins with each of us and then expands outward. Relationships of active love and mutual responsibility are at the heart of what we can do to make our world more caring and more just. While I generally think that the Little Prince says it all, as a rabbi, I do want to share some of the Jewish texts and traditions that shape my convictions on this call to individual and shared action. And sometimes the Jewish calendar itself offers unexpected possibilities. We are in the last few days of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, almost a week into what is known as the 3 weeks. This is traditionally a time of communal mourning, which begins on the 17th of Tammuz, which commemorates the breaching of besieged Jerusalem's walls by the Roman army, and culminates on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. On that day in 70 CE, according to tradition, the Jewish temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, a second temple, on the very day that the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians hundreds of years earlier. Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, has since come to encompass other moments of tragedy in Jewish history that occurred near this date. The start of the First Crusade, the expulsions of Jews from England, France, and Spain, the mass deportation of Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka. On the 10th of Av in 1994, 30 years ago, the Amia Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires was bombed, killing 85 people and injuring 300 in the deadliest terror attack in Argentina's history. Tisha B'Av has come to hold the collective grief of Jewish memory. On that day, which is August 12 this year, it's traditional to fast and to read Lamentations, the biblical account of the first temple's destruction. In Hebrew, Lamentations is named Echa for its first word. Echa literally means how, a statement of loss and despair. How could this have come to be? But I'm part of a Jewish movement which doesn't center or intensely mourn the destruction of Jerusalem's ancient temples. We are focused on Jewish life here and now, on what it means to be a person living in today's world with the urgencies of this time. We aren't looking back with nostalgia for the temple, but instead looking to the present and the future. So I'm moved by Rabbi Judith Hauptmann's teaching that Tisha B'Av and the 3 weeks that lead up to it are a chance to be in mourning for the past and for solidarity. This means that Echa, Lamentations, how, can be a chance for us to say, it happened, and what do we do now? How do we respond to this moment? Because I think in part, this is what we have the opportunity to imagine in times of communal grief like Tisha B'Av, to organize, to gather, to create something new. Rabbi Jeffrey Middleman explains that the Jewish emphasis on memory offers us precisely this. He says, we remember the good and the bad so that we can make tomorrow better than today and yesterday. Embodied in Judaism is the hope that despite inevitable setbacks and missteps, we can become the people we want to be and help create the world we wish to see. Much of Jewish tradition speaks of the power of the collective, of taking our individual experiences and stories and gifts and bringing them together to create something greater than ourselves. And I see this value come alive in my synagogue as we strive for social justice and interfaith partnerships, as we keep working towards being a community where each person matters and where together we make a difference. At Peninsula Temple Beth El, we are committed to creating and sustaining a culture of belonging, where everyone feels seen, valued, and part of something bigger. Each individual matters and contributes to our more meaningful whole. And two of the areas that exemplify this approach are our social justice work and our interfaith partnerships. Our social justice team is called Rodfei Tzedek, Pursuers of Justice in Hebrew, and we aim to infuse justice work into the entire temple. The leadership began in living rooms and on one-to-one coffee dates, inviting the passions and concerns of our community members. Climate change, reproductive justice, and voter engagement are our identified priority issues, those which animate our community and which bring us into partnership with other organizations working on these crucial needs. As part of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, we work with other Reform congregations in California to organize for climate justice, going to Sacramento to call on our representatives to pass bold and urgent legislation. And in partnership with Interfaith Power and Light, we brought 224 solar panels to our temple roof in 2022. We ensure that each person in our community has a role to play through our temple composting program and our vegetarian-forward community dinners. And Rodfei Tzedek also helps our clergy team plan our annual Repro Shabbat, a Friday night dedicated to reproductive justice and abortion access, as well as regular opportunities to learn and act for critical healthcare and bodily autonomy. Most recently, we launched our Vote 2024 task force, again in partnership with other reform organizations dedicated to voting access and civic engagement. So every Friday night after Shabbat services, and every Saturday morning after Torah study, we have lay leaders who organize letter and postcard writing for voter participation, and we have regular home-based postcarding evenings in support of the Florida Amendment to protect reproductive freedom. Each person, each postcard, each individual action, I'm watching them grow, quite literally. They add up to more than the sum of their parts, and when we bring our collective energy together, we feel less alone. We feel more empowered. We feel ready for the next step. Our Interfaith Friendship Committee began its work shortly after 9/11, dedicating temple members to supporting our Muslim neighbors in a time of heightened Islamophobia, recognizing the interconnectedness of our struggles and of the prejudices and suspicions we face as communities and individuals. We became a founding partner of the Peninsula Multi-Faith Coalition, which is composed of dozens of local faith houses and community organizations. As our mission statement reads, we strive to foster deep friendship with other faith houses in San Mateo and neighboring communities, get to know their members as individuals, learn from each other's faiths, embrace our commonality, and celebrate our uniqueness. While our Interfaith Friendship Committee participates in larger gatherings, like the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in January and learning panels throughout the year, we also intentionally focus on smaller opportunities to build relationships person to person. We've held movie and discussion nights with St. Bart's Catholic Church, joined our neighbors at the Hindu Mandir in San Bruno to celebrate Diwali, and invited our friends from Foster City's Island United Church to dress up for the Jewish holiday of Purim with us. And this past fall, we embarked on a year of connection with Pacifica Institute, a Turkish Muslim community here in the Bay Area. We hosted each other for Ramadan iftar dinners and for Passover seders. We went to museums and parks together, and we simply sat and shared tea and talked about our lives. With the attacks on October 7 and the ongoing hostage crisis and the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, this continues to be a year filled with grief and fear, and with rising anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We found comfort in connection in one another and strengthened our commitment to mutual understanding and collective care. And I hear the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who explained the philosophy of Ubuntu as meaning, "My humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up in yours. We belong in a bundle of life. I am human because I belong, I participate, and I share." Being in relationship is rarely simple. We are messy. We people made of hope and disappointment and memory and grief and pain and loss. But what we have is each other. Recently, our weekly Torah portion included the death of Miriam, prophetess and singer, and leader with her brothers Moses and Aaron of the Israelites in their journey from slavery to freedom. Immediately following her death and burial, the next verse of Torah states, "The community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron." Jewish commentators throughout the centuries have connected the sequence of Miriam's death and the sudden shortage of water. They explain that while Miriam lived, a mysterious well of living water accompanied her through the wilderness, nourishing the people, and the well and its water disappeared at her death. The people are literally bereft in her absence, and they react in anger against their remaining leaders. Moses and Aaron do their best to mollify the people and to care for them. But Moses, ordered by God to speak to a rock to bring forth water, instead strikes the rock with his staff and scolds the people while he's at it. The water streams out. God is angry with Moses, who didn't follow instructions. There's a lot we could explore about Moses, his grief and the loss of his sister, his burnout as a leader. But instead, I want to take us further into the Torah portion, where once again the people are without water. This time, however, no single leader calls it forth. There's no hitting of rocks. There's no shouting at others. Instead, there's song. The people assemble and they sing up the spring of water. Rabbi Abigail Halpern teaches that it is the well of the entire people. They sing it forth together, and this well is one of abundance. There's no struggle to get the life-giving waters from this communal iteration of the spring. Everyone can reach them and everyone can drink. Abundance and fullness is something we attain together. It is the solidity and joy of community that will bring us that which we most need. I think that this teaching means that filling our wells is a group endeavor. That doesn't mean it's easy. Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg teaches that living in community is a spiritual endeavor that forces us to be open and vulnerable and impacted by the joy and suffering of others, to allow their destiny to be ours and to allow them into our own. Or as Maya Angelou writes, lying thinking last night how to find my soul a home where water is not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone. I came up with one thing, and I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody, but nobody, can make it out here alone. I see this in the collaborative possibilities between our local communities as well. And I want to thank you for welcoming me this morning, for beginning this relationship, for establishing ties through shared experiences and explorations. As I shared earlier, my synagogue's Interfaith Friendship Committee is part of the Peninsula Multi-Faith Coalition, and our Road Faith Tzedek Pursuers of Justice organize with other synagogues and local justice organizations. And together with your own Reverend Tovis and Reverend Terry, I have the joy and opportunity to participate in the Peninsula Solidarity Cohort, this group of local faith leaders who seek to build solidarity among communities in San Mateo County, taking collective action to work for justice. We speak up at City Council and Board of Supervisors meetings. We attend protests and press conferences, and we learn together from organizers, activists, and other leaders about what we can do to support and lift up the most vulnerable members of our society. And we struggle together as we work through the pain points of our own identities and experiences and how they intersect with justice and accountability. While the Jewish commemoration of the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av is traditionally about mourning the past tragedies of the Jewish people, I'm thinking about the tragedies that we are living through right now in this country. The curtailing of fundamental rights like abortion access and gender-affirming care, rising waves of white supremacy and Christian nationalism, anti-democratic impulses and anti-immigrant policies, systemic racism and climate denial. The 17th of Tammuz, the beginning of the 3 weeks, marks the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, a harbinger of coming destruction. And yet, Alan Liu, Zen Buddhist turned rabbi, wrote that Tisha B'Av has a hot tip for us. Let the walls come down. Where are we? What transition point are we at? How long will we keep the walls up? Will we move from a state of siege to a state of openness? I have to acknowledge that Rabbi Liu is speaking to the individual psyche in his book. He's calling on each person to explore their own internal defenses. But Tisha B'Av is about the collective. It's traditionally not about our individual or personal losses, but the shared ones of a community. And so I see his words, let the walls come down, as a call to us individually and together to see our potential to open ourselves to action and partnership, to let the walls come down and to see what we can build in their place, each of us bringing our raw material bringing our part. In the Jewish novel, The Weight of Ink, the protagonist comes to realize it was indeed all of our history. No people's thread was separate from any others. Everyone's fate was woven together in this illuminated, love-stricken world. There could be no standing apart. So how will you weave your thread into this tapestry that we can create together? Maybe your call is to volunteer or to canvass or to fundraise for that about which you care most deeply. Maybe it's to reach out a hand and start a new friendship and see what you can make together. Maybe it's to share your story and allow it to change others. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince, I told you it was all about the Little Prince in the end, teaches that love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. Love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. So let's nurture and grow that love of belonging and justice and action and care by looking outward and forward together. Thank you.